Hello, welcome to Silverline Sunday. I am Curtis Fujita along with our Silverline Comics team. We're going to go ahead and talk about comic books and all sorts of cool stuff. So before we start, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Orlando Collectors Deviants, and also to Daytona Beach Comic Con. That will be on Saturday, September 10th and Sunday, September 11th. So pay attention to that, keep an eye out for it. And let's go around. Let's have everybody introduce themselves. I think Tommy had a special guest. So let's start with Tommy.
Gabby left already. So
she left already. All right.
Yeah, she took off. She didn't want to be on any longer. Name is Thomas Palmiotti Jr. Been around for early 90s doing mostly inking, but a lot of everything about comics, even the last 15 years, I run Kablam digital printing, so we're a big printing press place also. But I've been doing a lot of stuff for Roland with the Silverline stuff from the very beginning, and jump back in on this newest version of Silverline, and definitely having a good time doing some stuff with Roberta and Mr. Pete there, and with the Trumps thing. I'm making Pete and from Trump's issue 4, which we're going to be trying to knock that out pretty soon, and then we'll jump back on the team up book. So
That's me. Sorry. Just a moment. Let me go ahead and I'm getting used to everything here. Let me go ahead. We're going to go ahead and put it back to, I think Tommy, I accidentally took Tommy off. There's Tommy back. All right. Next up is Roberta. Roberta, please tell the folks about yourself.
Hi, I'm Roberta Conroy. I'm a graphic designer during the daytime, but on all of my spare time, which everything I can do, I end up doing work on several new Silverline titles for coloring. The Champion and Miss Fury Silverline Team Up, and Cat and Mouse, and also a older title, which is a black and white that we are turning into full color. So that's exciting, called Pendulum. So I'm doing those, and I've been working on coloring since the early 90s, and I worked with Thomas Palmiotti Jr. and Roland Man and Curtis Fujita. So
yeah,
back in the Malibu days.
Yeah,
back in the Malibu days.
Definitely. Well, very good. And
now I'm
next
back.
Up, back for more. And next up is Mr. Peter Clinton. Peter, tell the folks about yourself.
Oh, crikey. Look at me. Jesus. Yeah. What do I do? Oh, I draw the book. I draw Silverline Team Up, Champion Miss Fury, and Trump's issue 4, which I assume Tommy's finished inking. I don't know. I draw other stuff, but that's what I'm drawing for Silverline. Yeah, so I'm just a penciler.
There you go. And for myself, I'm Curtis Fujita. I'm the creative director at Silverline. I'm an artist and a writer, and I'm also a martial arts instructor. And so my upcoming comic book for Silverline is called Shadow Ghost. It's the Kung Fu comic by a Kung Fu master. So that's me. And we're missing, obviously, Roland, our fearless leader. He's not available today, but we're going to do our best. And we see everybody.
But are we really missing him? I don't think so.
Air quotes, right? air quotes takes care of the ambiguity of the whole thing.
I got to hang out with him for a couple hours yesterday as we were bike riding and looking at alligators.
Did you see more?
Still doing that nonsense?
Yeah,
that's fun stuff. We saw a bunch of gators.
I'm
yesterday.
glad you're doing that.
Cool.
Very cool. Very cool. And
the fear of nature in him.
Oh, no, it's having a good time exercising. All of a sudden, you turn 50, you got to start exercising a little more. So
that's good. It's good. It's good to exercise. Good to keep up on it.
Yep. You know? As long as you don't get bit.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking in the comments. I don't see Roland's father-in-law saying hello, big dummy. So he must know that Roland is not on stream right now.
Right.
But yeah. So we'll get right into it. So what we're going to go ahead and discuss today is the subject is how I learned to create comics. And so, we always kind of give a little bit of our background and what we've done, but I don't think we've had the chance to delve really deep into how each person here on the show kind of got the craft and got the experience, because it's a very specific skill set, not only to create comic books, but all the individual skills that all the people here have. So I figured we'd go around and discuss that. So I guess, the first thing, I guess, along that road would be, there has to be that moment where you actually decide that you want to make comics. It's either a book or you meet somebody or something happens. What was the inciting incident that had you folks decide, okay, hey, I like comic books so much, I'm going to go ahead and start making them? So any thoughts? Does anybody remember?
When did I decide that was what I was
God,
going
that
to
was
do?
such a long.
How about yourself? I think. How about you,
Pete, you go first, since you're the baby of the group.
Yeah.
Even though you are,
I don't
almost as old as us too.
When did I decide that? I don't know. I think probably as a child I decided this is what I wanted to do, but life happens, and it wasn't till probably 4 or 5 years ago which I actually said no. I gave everything up and said this is what I'm going to do. I think from the moment I picked up a comic book, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to draw those pictures and tell those stories, or just draw pretty pictures. I think from the moment I picked one up for my first Spider-Man comic book, first comic book I got, that's what I wanted to do. It just took a long time before adult me realized, what am I doing? Go draw comic books.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, we have somebody that's normally not on the other side of the chat.
Where is he?
Oh, what's he doing?
Hey, Roland. The inmates are running the asylum, so good to see you. So good. So that's so Pete, you kind of always knew that, and then got to the point where you knew that commitment. How about yourself, Tommy? What about you? I mean,
it's kind of like what Pete said. It was just Spider-Man for me too, but at the very beginning. But it was it was always just liking comic books as a kid. Never really thought about drawing comics or working in the comic book industry. I've always liked to draw, and I always could draw. I've never had any official, as we could tell by my inks, I've never really had any training. I just always liked to draw ever since I was little. And for me, it turned out that when I got out of high school, when I started going to college, I ended up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, going to USM, and fell in love with comics again by going to comic shops, right? And then it's like, well, look at all these books. I knew a few books, but as you were getting them from the 7-Eleven and the drugstore and all that kind of stuff. But no, while in college, it happened there was 3 guys that were breaking into comics, and I have a computer science degree is what I went to school for, but they were, one of them was writing stuff, and the other 2 were in the art department, taking art classes and stuff, and and I met them through different. I'm not going to say who they are, Roland, Steven, and Mitch, but. They started getting feedback from publishers and stuff. They were turning and doing comics and all this kind of. And I just thought in my head, it's like, shoot, I can draw. I would do that. I love comics too. Let me do this. And so I couldn't draw, but I thought I could draw, and so I just started. Practicing a whole bunch. Roland always tells my story about, getting a lot of ink samples over Steven and Mitch, and eventually they started looking good, and they started, they put me to work, and ever since then, so I think the first stuff I ever got published when I was like 22, 23. Yeah, that was didn't have a clue what I was doing, but I was getting stuff published or having stuff, some of my work published. A book called Scum of the Earth that was through Aerosol. That was a Malibu book. And then, I was working on the Cat and Mouse stuff. I did a few issues of Cat and Mouse. I did pretty much all of the Demon Tales books. And then that's when Roland ended up going to working for Malibu. And, and then he I rode in on his coattails. That's where I met you guys, sort of. We didn't officially meet, but, we all worked together. And so no, that was pretty much it. Now, should I have stayed doing computer? Maybe, probably.
We'll save that for the end of the show.
Money.
Should I keep doing it?
No, it was just my wife, Renee. She saw that I liked doing it, and she was like, well, we got to pay the rent. We got to pay the, this, if you can make enough money where, we can do all this stuff, take a chance. And so, I quit working my full-time job while I was going to college, and then I started making money, especially when I started working from doing the Ultraverse books and Marvel stuff. I broke into those bigger companies and then started making a bunch of money. Then it started turning out pretty good at that point. So, I'll stop.
No, it's fascinating. How about you, Roberta? What was the inciting incident for you to go ahead and
it's funny because I have a weaving in and out, I think, in my story, because I've always loved drawing ever since I was extremely little, and I've had, I don't know, fascination mostly with the Sunday comic strips when I was really little, and I just loved copying them and making my own. And I had quite a few books I've made of, like, extra Garfield or something, and just fun little things that I would draw. And I noticed that I don't know, there was a time that they had Robotech coming out on TV, and I just drew Robotech characters for, like, I don't know, a year.
Wow.
It was dumb, but there we go. So, like, every time I thought I'm going to be a fantasy artist or a book cover illustrator, that's really what I was thinking. I didn't really think comics because I didn't really think that I would be able to break into that. Yeah. So, I just thought, well, I'm going to try to be a commercial illustrator and see where it goes. And, that doesn't always make a lot of money unless you, actually are really prolific. And I was thinking, well, maybe I should have a fallback. And I went to school for graphic design and illustration, both. And I figured if I can get into comics, I would love it. But I didn't see how. And then just somehow, I'd have to say just accidentally, I met the right people. And, I was able to see that they were starting up at Malibu. And I thought, that is exactly what I want to do. And I'll tell you why. Because every single painting that I did, physical painting in school, looked like a cartoon. Like, just that's what I love to do. Like, it just looked that way. It just had this kind of comic feel, the drama of it, And so I was like, that's really the angle I want to go for. So that's what I wanted to do. And, when this opportunity came to do, I'd say, coloring on all of the Ultraverse titles, they're all different. So I got a very big, wide range of skill out of that. And it just set me into being extremely happy to do that.
That's great. We keep talking about hearing the word Ultraverse come up, and now it's a defunct brand, as is unfortunately Malibu Comics who published it. While I say this, Roberta, did you want to do some art, and then maybe we'll have Tommy take over for your...
Sure. Let me start it. Yeah, it just takes a little bit of clicking here, but yes.
Yeah. So, but at the time, the Ultraverse brand was one of the premier brands out there, and was very competitive with the comic books, with Marvel and DC and all those things, and it really was a great start for a lot of people. For myself, I I loved comic books right from the start, probably like age 6 or 7. Wanted to do the art, wanted to be an artist for it. But I think the thing for most of us here, depending on what spectrum of the ages, there was no internet at the time. So there wasn't like a clear path on how to get into comic books, so you had to kind of really research or be lucky enough to know somebody to get into it. So for me, that's how I was just because I'm a big fan of X-Men, and eventually started working as an intern at Malibu Comics and so forth and so on, and got some exposure there. So yeah, so okay, so that's kind of everybody's initial kind of way in. Did any of you, well, one thing that Tommy kind of mentioned was he was talking about his wife. I found that I was very fortunate that my family was extremely supportive of me doing it. It wasn't like you have to be a doctor or something like that. They were very supportive. So that was kind of my backbone. Did everybody kind of have like support and kind of people that understood why you were wanting to do this, or was it a little bit of a different experience? I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that.
No, mine thought I was crazy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Everyone thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
I
They're like,
was
"What?"
very fortunate. I've been very well supported by my family. I mean, I gave up work and said I want to move to America to go to the Joe Hewitt School because I've always wanted to go.
Yeah.
And my partner was like, "Yeah, when can we leave?" So yeah, I was very lucky, and my family supported me in doing that. And yeah, I don't think I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have done it if they hadn't supported me. It wouldn't be possible at all. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it helps, but I think, sometimes it's hard for people to understand because it's not the normal career path, right? For people, like not only I want to be an artist for a job, because some people don't even understand the concept that you can be a professional artist, but then you can always say, hey, look at every piece of every packaging of everything you have in your house and everything that you've read and everything you watch. And there's an artist's fingerprints there somewhere, but they don't see it that way. But like for Tommy and Roberta, you said people thought you were kind of, crazy. Did they get Luke? Did they warm up to the idea as you progress through your career? I get it now, or I understand you can actually make money doing this, or are they still
Eventually.
trying to?
Yeah, eventually.
Eventually.
And they saw it was working,
Mhm.
and that I was actually stable with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then, I think they're like, oh, okay. It's like all it really takes is networking. And so you keep on that path and see what happens. So yeah, eventually it was supporting, but initially there's like, oh my God, you're crazy.
Mine was totally out of the blue because it was, I all through high school and before high school and even before started high school, I've always been a computer gaming nerd. We've talked here several times about, well, I can't play computer games because I'm addicted to them. So I've always been. I'll sit there and when I'm one of those guys that'll just even now I would just sit there and just play all night because I just love it, playing games and all that kind of stuff. So that was my reason for wanting to learn how to program. And I've the way that just so happens the way that my brain works, I guess I like to code. I'm a really good coder too. So that's why I went to school for computer science and. I wanted to be to write games and stuff, and I wrote a bunch of games, in high school and stuff that were pretty cool. And so all my family and I taught myself. When I went to college, I just jumped right into the higher level, coding classes and stuff, and just kind of skipped over. They allowed me to skip over those beginning classes because I didn't need to take all those classes because I already had taught myself how to, program in assembly language and C and C++ and all that kind of stuff that you'd have to learn, as you were trying to take classes. So, so I did go to school for all that stuff. And then right there at the end, fixing the, start doing all that recruiting stuff to go do some work. And I'm like, I'm going to draw Spider-Man. And they're like, but they always knew I could draw because, you know, it was always, I would always help, you know, family and stuff with art projects. And, you know, during high school and stuff, you know, I would always help with the art classes and stuff and do things, but I was never in the art classes. I just could do it.
Mhm.
You know, I've always been somebody that could just see things and figure them out on my own, and then give me a week or two, and then I can just do them.
Yeah.
So I consider myself more of a con artist as the artist part. I'm able to fake things out to
Some
enough.
people have started companies being con artists, and so, you
Exactly.
know.
Yeah. So all of a sudden it was time to finish school, and it was like, you know, I think I'm going to not do all these interviews through all these companies that are trying to recruit you, and because that's what you know how colleges do. You have the people come by and try to get you to do to go to work. And then I just, you know, it's Rolling in them's fault, you know, blame Rolling. Yeah, just started drawing comics, and then all of a sudden, you know, I'm telling my family that it's like, you spent how much money on a university? It's like, and you're not going to do anything with that. I'm like, well, you know, yeah, let me try this for a little bit, and it's just kept going. So yeah, it was nuts. They thought it was crazy. It's like, you spent, and they knew all through high school and stuff that I just love to write programs and the code and to do all that kind of stuff. And I still do now, like with the Kablam site, you know, Barry and I have developed the look of it, but all of the code of the website is what I've, you know, the stuff that I wrote. So it's so for good or for bad, Kablam's my fault.
Well, before we go too much further into it, Tommy, do you want to do some art?
I thought Roberta was
I
showing.
think there was a little bit of technical
I can't
issues.
get it to share.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll pull it up.
Yeah, my Photoshop is just bouncing and not opening. The older version of Photoshop doesn't have permission to share, so I don't know how to get out of it.
Well, for me, it was, you know, it was definitely, you know, like I was saying, I was very supportive, and definitely it was my mom was extremely supportive. You know, my parents got divorced when I was really young, and so you know, I didn't really grow up around my dad, and I think sometimes some of that guilt may have kind of helped me get my mom to take me to a lot more comic conventions.
I'm not laughing, but I went through the same thing. You were able to do some stuff that you probably
Oh,
wouldn't
yeah.
have been able to do.
Yeah. So, but
get
yeah,
away with, rather. Yeah.
So I mean, she would take me to comic conventions and all this stuff, and of course, you know, this is back in the days of the dungeon comic book conventions, and my mom was, you know, was a very pretty lady and young looking, and so, you know, I can only imagine what she had to deal with. I remember she took me to one convention, and the head of the convention was hitting on her because it was like, oh, look, there's a woman here, you know. So, but yeah, you know, so very, very, very supportive in that regard, you know. So did, you know, for me, I always talk about like kind of like chasing the dragon, like how like a drug addict gets something and they just want to get that first hit. I've always kind of I always enjoyed like watching cartoons and kind of just sitting on my belly and drawing when I was a little kid. Oh, Roberta left. And that's kind of like what the whole premise that I'm still trying to do, you know, is kind of trying to get back to that kind of experience. For you guys, were you creating comics before you started, like in Pete's case, you know, started going to the Kubert school, or in Tommy's case, started drawing it or starting to build up your freelance portfolio? Were you doing it kind of like fan stuff as a kid, or was it not until you specifically were kind of pursuing this as a job that this
I wasn't, and that was a mistake. I think you should. I just kept doing like redrawing pages from comic books, like so I had a portfolio, which is fine. I think you should do that as well. But if you want to make comics, just go and make comics. That's all there is to it. If you come up with an idea, go and make the comic. Do it yourself.
Yeah. Were you drawing though? I mean, maybe not comic art, but were you drawing?
Oh yeah. No, I've always drawn. I've always done art, and I've always, you know, I got the How to Draw Comics the Marvel way as when I was a kid, and I just I've still got it, and I think anyone who wants to draw comics should get it. And yeah, I copied that religiously, and it did everything in there that it told you to do.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, gave me a head start on when I went to the Kubert school. I've been drawing for a long time already.
Yeah.
I've been drawing comics specifically. So.
It's a great book, but it's also kind of one of those things where it's like when you're looking at it, there is this element of like a cooking show where they're like, okay, you mix these things together, and you go over to the oven and they pull it out complete, and you're like, I think I'm missing some of the steps.
This is what when I'm teaching kids to do comics, I said, right, so we can do the stick man, and we can do different shapes for the body, for like, cylinders and circles and squares and whatnot. And I said, and then the next bit you're not going to be able to do, because it takes years and years and years and years of practice and learning anatomy, because you go from those spheres and cylinders to basically a finished muscle thing. It's just, if you don't know that, you're not going to be able to do it. And I think that was the book. It was like, well, so you got this step one, step two, and then step three, it's like, whoa,
you're done. Yeah,
exactly. How did you get from 2 to 3? That's huge.
Yeah, so I remember when I got that as a kid, and it was just like, my gosh, talk about intimidating. You're like,
yeah.
As soon as they started getting into perspective and they got into like developing things in shapes of cylinders and stuff, my brain was just fried. I was like checking out. I had such a hard time at that point, but it's still a great resource, and
yeah, it is. It's just comic, just draw comics. And, and it teaches those basics of perspective and shadow and construction of a page, and why. That's what I really loved. I loved those comparisons. They had like one on the left hand side. They had a comic book page, and it was good. On the right hand side, they had the same page again, but it was dynamic and it was exciting, and the camera angles changed and the body language changed. You're like, oh, cool. That's what you have to aim for. That's why even now that's what I still aim to do.
Sure.
Trying to make boring, but it's the conversation stuff still interesting to look at.
Oh yeah, I remember they had that picture of like a robot coming through a wall in the original version, completely flat, and he's just like this. It looks like a stage play, and then there's the other page that looks like at a Dutch angle underneath. Yeah, it's great.
Brilliant.
And yeah, absolutely fascinating. How about you, Tommy? Were you kind of drawing comic book stuff before you kind of began your onboarding process, for lack of a better term, into the industry, or no?
Yeah, see, I'm the weird one. No, I did not. I drew whatever I felt like drawing. I wasn't drawing comics. I was doing a lot of just little cartoony things. It's like you were talking about earlier, just watching the Saturday morning cartoon stuff. I really like super cartoony stuff. No, it wasn't until college that where I mean, when I say I literally sat there and saw Stephen and Mitch and Roland and them, just I was an idiot, but I really saw those guys and was like, I can do that. And then I just started practicing, and then within the year I was doing it.
That's great.
It's just the weird thing with me, but it's like I mentioned a while ago, I can pick up things pretty quick. I've always been able to pick up things.
Well, I think you and Pete both kind of talked about it, and you both said you just do it. That's how you get good at it. And kind of like in my martial arts background, there's like this fundamental posture called the horse stance, where you have to kind of sit in this squatting position, and it gives you all the foundational stuff moving forwards. And it's really difficult. And people will say, I've had people come up to me and say, well, maybe maybe can I do squats, or can I do this? Can I do that? How can I do it to get good at it? And I said, yeah, there's a perfect exercise. What is it? Horse stance. Like there's no way to do it but to do it. And by doing it, you get familiar, So I think that's just a common truth. Okay. And now Roberta's back in.
I did want to say though, real quick.
You want to give it a try for the sharing?
Well, maybe maybe would you want to try like in a little bit, since Tommy's our turn? We'll kind of.
I love watching Tommy, so
yeah, we'll switch back.
I wanted to say about what Pete was talking about a while ago. It's like I did pick one of the easier. It's not easy, but one of the simpler things if you were going to try to break into comics to try to do. I wasn't trying to be a penciler. I mean, I do a pretty decent job now, but I wasn't, I was really trying to be an inker, because I figured I wanted to do comics, and I'm like, I think that'd be the fastest way for me to get in.
Mhm.
And that was so big thumbs up for Pete and stuff. I even that I can't draw this kind of stuff that we're looking at on the screen here. I can do cartoony stuff like this, but I can't draw this kind of
Well,
stuff.
speaking of what's on the
I can
screen,
eat the crap out of it, but I can't draw it. There's no way.
so speaking of what's on the screen, why don't you go ahead and let everybody watching know what they're looking at and
This is Trump's number 4. This is what Mr. Pete drew, and this is page 6 of the Trump's number 4. So yeah,
Nice.
That's a beautiful page.
Looking good.
I mean, I could draw this. I don't care what Pete says.
and Roberta, so I know you stepped out just briefly, but so what we were going over was essentially, did you do any comic book art prior to actually starting to do it as a career, or was it something that you kind of picked up as you were actually working in the industry?
No, I actually picked it up there at Malibu.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and I think it was because I had such a very strong background with illustration in school. I was very confident that it would translate because I was fascinated by color. That was one of the things that really was a focus of mine when I was watching things, is just how light falls on different objects and people. And so I think it just turned out to be a perfect way to have that tendency to like hone a talent by doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. So I never felt like I was stumbling at it, because the pace was fast. So you just trust yourself to just learn, and I think it worked.
Definitely. And I think, you had mentioned before that you were studying under our guest next week, Jerry Bingham, a phenomenal artist, illustrator, painter, comic book artist, just absolutely stunning.
Absolutely.
And I remember he took me a little bit under his wing when I was there. I think he took everybody that was an artist under his wing.
He did. He was very helpful.
And he even would have figure drawing. After hours we'd have a figure drawing class. And I still remember him telling me, what you hear so many people echo. I remember we had Sergio Aragones at the office too, and he said, you gotta be able to do it for real as an illustrator, as a painter, as all these things. Then you can translate it to comic books, animation, whatever. But you gotta have the goods, regardless. That was something Jerry used to always instill. And I remember one time we were doing figure drawing, and I got bored, so I threw like a bionic arm on the model, and Jerry walked around. He just shook his head, and he goes, you can take the comic books away from the boy, but you can't take the comic books outside of the boy. Something along those lines.
That's funny.
Yeah. But, for me, I actually was like drawing comic books even before I started working in the industry and working at Malibu. And I actually did like my own 22-page comic book with ink and all this stuff, and horrific probably by today's standards, but it was such a learning experience and so fun to do. And then starting at Malibu Comics, then it's like, oh, this is how it's really done. So that's interesting. So that was kind of everybody's kind of backstory before you got into it. So I figured maybe I just kind of go on and get a little bit more specific and to ask questions to each of you specific to your kind of journey. So for you, Pete, that's a big move, not just at being an adult, having a career. Because correct me if I'm wrong, were you in finance or
I was in
something?
finance for 10 years. Yeah, I did. Don't know why. That was why I did it.
Yeah. And from there, then you transitioned and not only went to go and study, but you went to study abroad, essentially.
Yeah.
Was that something that it was like it took a year or so of just kind of soul searching, or was it just like one day you're like, you know what, I've had it with this and I'm out? How did that go?
I realized I hated what I was doing, and I was just to backtrack. So I got made redundant, and then I started doing it for myself. I was working for myself, and I liked that because it meant I could just stay home and draw all day. So I wasn't making any money, but I was drawing comics, and I was like, "What am I doing? I just want to draw comic books." But I knew I'd lacked. I'd been out of it for too long. I hadn't progressed as quickly as I should have done for my age. And I was like, well, I always wanted to go to the Cuba school, and now I can actually afford to go. So I literally just said to my girlfriend, I said, if I moved to America to study comic books, would that be okay? And she was like, yeah, let's go. So I was like, right, okay, as long as she's on board. And then I checked out to make sure that my dog could come with us. I had to check the airlines. A lot of airlines said no. A lot of airlines said they wouldn't fly my dog because he's a pug, and short-nosed dogs, they don't like them on flights. They're breathing difficulties. So for a while, I was like, well, I'm not going to go if I can't take the dog. It's not fair. And yeah, so, but we did. Someone came back, Virgin came back and said, yeah, we'll fly the dog. So I was like, right, okay, I can get the dog there. I can get there.
Wow.
And I just applied to the school, and the school said, yeah. I did my interview at the school, which was the most horrible thing I've ever done.
How so? How so? How was it so horrible?
Well, because I stupidly thought that my work was pretty good.
Oh,
It's okay. I should be all right. And you sent it, and then I have to do a telephone interview with Mike Chen, who does all the interviews for the, to get into the school. And Mike, if you ever meet Mike, he's he doesn't say very much. He doesn't give you very much. And I'm like, I kept asking him, so it's good? My stuff's good? And he asked me questions. And eventually, in the call, I said, so my stuff is okay, yeah? And he goes, it's adequate. I was like, oh, wow.
And that's a compliment.
That's in the stomach. It's okay. I was like, oh, you're asking me to spend a lot of money on adequate. I was like, okay. But yeah, I got in, and very quickly after that, it was like, well, let's go. We moved out there and found somewhere to live and started school 3 weeks later. Yeah.
Now had you seen, like, so you said you'd wanted to go there for some time.
Yeah.
Was it because of the ads in the comic book that you always put the Tarzan-like figure?
Yeah.
And had you
it was usually the two kids and they're being attacked by monsters, and one of them saying, "Oh, but on the good side, we've been just accepted into Cuba school." And Adam and Andy Kubert were like two of my idols. I thought their stuff was incredible. X-Men and Wolverine and stuff. And I was like, oh man, to go to that school with those guys are there. I did the correspondence courses as a kid. My mum paid for those correspondence courses, and you're just a kid just doing stuff. And I was so excited. I got stuff back, and I was convinced I was getting stuff back from Joe Hewitt himself.
Like Santa Claus.
I'm not sure if I was. I might have been doing. I don't know. I know Fernando Ruiz does it now, but yeah. And so the moment I realised, actually, no, I do have the money. I can do this now. I don't get any student loans being an overseas student, so I had to pay for everything myself. So those years working in finance paid for that basically. I'm poor now. But
was it what you expected? Like once you were there and doing it, or was it more? Was it the same? What was that experience like?
I don't know what I expected going there. Yeah. I don't think I had any expectations. I just knew I was going to go and learn. I went there thinking, I'm not awful. I know the basics. I know how to do certain things. I just need to brush up. I'm not very good in car. I need to brush up on that. Turned out I needed to brush up on a lot of stuff. But yeah, I don't think I had any expectations. I just going there expecting that I would be much better coming out than I am now, which is true. Yeah. You do learn an awful lot there, and you work very hard. And I had no problem doing that. I'd made this decision as an adult that this is what I was going to do the rest of my life. So I had no problem drawing all day, every day.
That's great.
Yeah, I loved it.
That's excellent.
I just say you don't have to go to art school to do this.
No, but
you can do what I did and just sit at home drawing. But it's hard.
Yeah, when I went to art college, one of the illustrators that worked with us at Malibu named Keith Conroy, he said, he didn't go to art college, he didn't have an art degree, but what he said is you're putting yourself in an environment where that is like your job, and it's structured and you're doing it. And so for some people, that's very advantageous. It's not that you need to, because all of us know that you don't show your diploma to get any job in the art world, but it does help, it does help to kind of have that kind of lifestyle, so so let's get to Tommy a little bit on that. So for Tommy, for you were saying, I mean, it sounds kind of like, you kind of hit the ground running, right? I mean, you were moving along in tandem with Roland, Mitch, and Steven.
I fully admit, I rode in on their coattails but you still had to be able to do the work,
Sure.
So even though I didn't have any schooling at all, I still had I mean, you got to have the eye. I was still, I could see what I needed to do. So you still have to have something, right? And Stephen and Mitch and Roland, they put me in touch with a few people. The one guy that really helped me out was Jimmy Palmiotti. I used to do backgrounds for him for pretty much everything he did in the 90s.
And was he local to you, or where was he?
Oh no, he's in New York.
So
no, Stephen, I think he inked Stephen on something or another, and then Roland and them, they all met at they became buddies somehow or another.
So would it get like FedEx to you, or how did that process work? Because this is all pretty much
Well, yeah. At first, with Jimmy, he'd get the pages, and just like any other ghost inking kind of thing, usually it's people that you have around him, but he would just send them to me. So there was always that risk of the pages getting lost. FedEx, loses things from time to time, as you know. But make photocopies of everything, make really good copies of everything that you're sending. But no, Jimmy would just I was getting 2 or 3 packages a week from Jimmy. He would just send me, we would talk at the beginning of the week. He would say, I'm working on this book this week. I'm going to send you, 30 pages, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He basically, probably shouldn't say this over the air. He'd send me a bunch of blank checks. And then at the end, when I send the pages back to him, I do everything but like the faces for most of the time, clothes, but all the backgrounds. Sometimes I do all the clothes. Sometimes I do, just pretty much everything. And then he'd come back and Jimmy him up is what I called it. He'd make him like his stuff because we don't ink anything alike. He was more of the screechy scratcher kind of inking guy. And then, so I'd come back with these real pristine looking inks, and then he'd come make them look like Jimmy's stuff. And then he would, it was funny. So we would be talking on the phone, and he'd go, "Oh, here's 15 pages," and he'd go 15, times 3. I would say 1, 2, 3, 4 times 25. How about 300 or $3,000? I'm like, okay. And so he's just $3,000 on the check and just stick it in the bank. And so so that's how it kind of worked with you. But then towards the middle of when we started working, it kind of got known that I was doing work for him, and the pencilers would just send me the pages.
Okay.
And, and then Marvel was fine with it, and whoever else, if it was Dark Horse or whoever, a lot of the times I would just get the pages. They would just send them straight to me. The pencilers knew that I was, because Jimmy was doing, 5-6 books a month. There's one person can't do 6 books a month. So obviously somebody was helping. And
well, that's like Mike Diodato. I remember in the 90s, you're like, who is this guy, Mike Diodato? How's he doing like 7 or 8 books every month?
How is this one guy doing 20 books a month? This is crazy. This is insane. Month after month after month.
And it was a studio, right? Essentially.
Yeah, it was a bunch of guys that he would just put his And I don't even, was there a real Mike Diodato? Was there a real person?
That's the question, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I never met him.
Yeah. Mike Deodato's nowhere and he's everywhere. I think that was
I'm telling you. But that's how it kind of went for me. It was just just practicing, and then eventually, I was doing some smaller stuff with Roland and them, doing the cat and mouse stuff, and then just because of all the work that I was doing, I started getting some Spider-Man stuff, and so that was really the cool thing. So
that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
How about for you, Roberta? I mean,
Mhm.
what was that when you started out? And the fascinating thing for you is it was just the digital age of comic book production, and let's just be frank, the digital age of art. Was
it absolutely started. Yeah.
So did you have a Photoshop background before starting at Malibu, or was that something that you picked up there?
Yeah, I had just spent way too much money on on a Mac with a lot of extra RAM, and the RAM chip was like, I don't know, 40 megs or something like that, and it was like $3,200, I forget, for this Mac. But I was all set up, and I bought Photoshop, so I did it on my own. I went to a university, and to be honest, they were a little behind the times with the computer stuff.
Sure.
So I've been doing computer art since there were computers.
Wow.
I did Print Shop Pro. I did on my Apple IIc, I would make dots. I programmed a little bit when I was younger. So I think really what came down to is I thought in digital art. I played every video game when I was a kid. It was very chunky back then. I thought it was kind of like, I really was more interested in having a career in animation, and because that seemed a little more smooth.
Sure.
Not as static, but I would have to say, like, when I started working on it as a full-time job, the style that I had in painting was very easy to translate. And
Okay.
I found it almost no different, really.
How so? Was it a little bit graphic, or what? How would you?
I was working for a post house as an intern when I was in college before Malibu, and I quit it actually to be part of Malibu.
Okay.
And we were doing work with Saban and
Sure.
doing rotoscoping. So I was drawing already for computer art. I was doing a lot of computer illustration.
So that was some TV. That was TV shows, right? What do you recall? What shows? Was it like Power Rangers, or what would it be?
Yeah, it was Power Rangers.
You were Power Rangers? Nice. Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. It was funny.
That's cool.
Oh, it was so funny.
Oh, that's great.
That was a fun job, but I mean, I was astounded how tedious it is for like a second to get a second's worth of someone shooting a magic shot across at a character, and how long it would take to arc, whatever electricity look, and speckles coming on and off and glowing on the characters, and it was crude and difficult.
Sure.
But I learned a lot. But
did you enjoy the time working in comic books more?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Because of the speed.
Yeah.
I mean, rotoscoping was really slow. And I thought, maybe in the future I'll get faster, but at this stage, with the way that computers are, this was like $1 million machine I'm working on, and it's second by second drawing. It's very slow.
Sure.
So
definitely.
I really enjoyed the speed that I could draw, and it literally went to press just like that, just like I drew. So I didn't have to scan it and have the colors ruined. And, it just really was a wonderful process to go straight to 4-color art.
Definitely. And for those watching, I mean, it's commonplace now. I mean, it's the standard, but at the time, Malibu was very far ahead of the curve. To put it bluntly, it was Malibu and Image Comics were probably some of the only ones doing digital stuff, and Marvel and DC were still doing things in that kind of archaic,
Yeah.
color separation, you know, and for quite a while. I mean, I would say for the bulk of the duration of Malibu's time, kind of the twilight of its years, where it was really doing color comic books. DC and Marvel couldn't hold a candle to it, and towards the end, Marvel and DC started doing digital, but the mentality of the coloring and the quality of the coloring was still very old school and kind of archaic at that time, you know. For myself, that initial part was, you know, learning it and all that was working as an intern. You know, again, it was a weird time because, you know, I was in high school, so I would love to have worked full time and done really cool stuff, but I was just a kid, you know. And what most people don't know is I was one of the very first people there. I mean, when I was there was only a handful of people. The color team was maybe 5 or 4 people at the time, and they were all sitting at a card table. And I started before Roland. I started before a whole bunch of people. And I, you know, being a kid, I saw everybody climbing through the ranks, but I couldn't because, you know, I'm a kid, you know, I have to go to school and do my homework, you know, but being in that position to
you had to be home by 5 o'clock.
Yeah. But being in that position to be, you know, I think the idea of an apprenticeship, I think Cassisi was watching last week and he used the word apprenticeship. An apprenticeship is something that you don't see a lot nowadays. It's more about degrees and getting higher education, but the idea of learning a craft and learning every aspect of a craft. And I think that was one of the beautiful things for me at Malibu is I got to see every part of the creation and get an idea. And at that time, the thing that was so interesting, we had what's called the color designer position, right? And so the color designer would actually do the colored artwork on a piece of paper with usually Pantones or Prismacolor pens, and then that would get handed off to the color teams that would actually do it all and kind of use that as a guideline for Photoshop. And so you used to go into the art room and you'd see just people with these amazing sets of Prismacolor pens, like, you know, over 200 pens in this huge kind of. They're beautiful
colors.
Oh, and I would just drool over it, and I knew I wanted to do coloring, and I still remember. So without me knowing this, my mom had talked to Roland. I don't know if Roland remembers this, and Roland had found out the exact brand and the whole thing. And for my birthday, she got it for me, and so I had this. This is towards my end of time at Malibu, and so I was practicing doing color designs, and it's like that saying, you know, luck is when preparation and opportunity meet. And so I just happened to be coloring and practicing, and my friend Phil, who became one of the editors, we both started as interns. Phil was working on a book, and there was an opening. They had a tight deadline, and he asked me to do the color designs on it. So that's how I actually started moving from to the art side, you know. So it's a great experience. So we kind of got the first round of things, how it was starting out, getting into it. You know, we kind of talked about who were some of the people that were really like strong influences on you. I mean, I think Tommy was kind of alluding to that with Jimmy Palmiotti, but were the people that really stand out that like this was my mentor. These were the people that really pushed me and got me to that next level, or was it just everybody that you were training with, learning from, what have you? How about you, Pete? What was it at the Kubert School? I mean, how is it done there? Do you have is there a wide breadth of different instructors, or how was that?
Yeah, so obviously you get there's loads of instructors. All of them are professionals in one aspect or another, whether it be pencilers and inkers. You got the business people who are ex-editors. You got professional colorists, professional inkers, writers. Everyone who works there, teaches there, is a professional comic book something. So you're learning from all these people. And yet they obviously have people come in, like in the third year you have masterclass lessons. So we had Lee Weeks was doing our masterclass lesson. Wow. So that was awesome. You have Tom Mandrake, Jane Dersimer, Fernando Rui. There's so many you're learning from, and that's brilliant.
Were you ever starstruck? Was it because all these people are just a lot of time just names on paper, right?
Yeah, they are.
And you know what I mean? At least for me, when I was coming up, I didn't even know what they looked like.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah,
Other than Adam and Andy,
sure.
I don't think I knew what any of them looked like. I guess. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. No, I don't think I did. And Adam and Andy only taught the second and third years, so I didn't get to actually be taught by them because they left by the time I got to the third year. But it didn't matter. I mean, I think in fact they were so busy anyway drawing that that someone else was really teaching for them. But Tom Mandrake and Jan Desmond sort of lead the narrative art, the actual comic book drawing, comic book creation.
That's great.
And they'd come in and they'd show you what they're working on, or show you the next page. You just sit there and go, Jesus, I'm never going to be able to do. How do they do that?
How many years was the program?
It's like watching magic, and Kim DeMolder inking. It's just, it's gobsmacking. It's like just sitting there every day watching these people they come down. It looks so easy. It's just incredible. So that would, the school, obviously you're surrounded by people and you're learning from all the time. And, but before that, I just learned by copying the guys I've really liked, the comic books I really like. So Jim Lee, Michael Turner, Mark Silvestri, the Cuberts. I just always copying their stuff as a kid. I think that's a good way of learning. I say to the kids I teach, so just grab a comic book, just copy a page, copy a panel. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, because you're going to be learning. Whether you realise it or not, you're learning just by copying someone.
Well, all the secrets are there on the page.
How to draw Marvel, how to draw comics Marvel way. I used to copy those pages. And of course, at that time, I didn't really know who I was copying, but of course, I'm copying one of the best ever to ever do it. Like, this guy's amazing. Look at how good that Dr. Doom is. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I always think like all the secrets, there are no secrets. You just have to have the eyes to see it, right? And
yeah, afraid there's no shortcut. There's no secret. It's just you got to, and then your school, you're drawing 12 hours a day. Really, you're drawing 12, 14 hours a day. And you learn just by doing it. Like Roberta was saying, she was learning faster just by doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You can have people lecture you all day long, but unless if you don't try it and try getting it wrong, you're not gonna. Yeah.
How many people, if you just kind of racialize people that started the same time as you, because art school sometimes does that. How was there a huge drop off as the
school
year?
does have a high dropout rate.
Yeah.
They say that and Mike Chen said that to me in the interview that it's a high dropout rate because it's so much hard work.
Yeah,
I think it's very hard.
I was a little older, so I'd made the decision that this is what I was doing in my life, and whatever happens, this is what I'm doing now. Mm-hmm. Kids that come straight out of high school, mm-hmm. I personally think they need to take a year or two out to mm-hmm. go and do either a really basic art class somewhere or just do some living for a year or two, mm-hmm. because they come out and I don't think they're prepared for just how much hard work they have to do, how long they have to do it for. Because mm-hmm. sitting down and drawing for 12 hours a day is tough. Mm-hmm. You really got to love it, and it's very difficult if you. I remember not being. I don't know how to draw hands, so I just leave them. Of course, you can't leave them when you're at a school. It's like you've not drawn the hands. So this is useless. Yeah, it's rubbish. No good. So if you know how to do something, you don't know how to do it very well. People just procrastinate and put it off and put it off and put it off.
Sure.
You can't do that, and I think it is, and the work just keeps piling up. So people drop out. Years 1 and 2, people drop out. And I always thought if you made it at the end of year 2, just do the last year. Why would you do the last year? But of course, it's expensive, and if it's not what you want to do, why would you? I was looking at it from the point of view as if you want to draw comic books, why would you leave? But of course, it's not that simple.
Well, I think it's so many things. It's people want it, but how much do you want it, right? you know,
It's like anything, isn't it? You've got to be prepared to practice, and yeah, if you don't want it that much, you won't practice hard enough. My dad always said, "Practice hard, play easy," because he's a professional sportsman.
Yeah.
I never really wanted to do the practicing. I just wanted to go and play. He said, "No, you practice really hard, and the playing bit's easy. Just it's the same with making comics. It is hard work, but the more you do it, the easier it gets."
It's like in boxing, they say the fight is won not in the ring, the fight is won in the gym, right? Before we kind of move on a little bit, Tommy, Roberta, you folks want to switch and see a little bit of what Roberta's working on? If you have everything working pretty good.
Yeah, I'm getting.
Okay. So while we do that, for Tommy, you kind of conveyed to us how much, Jimmy Palmiotti, was a big influence, and so forth. Were there any other people that kind of were big influences on your career, or was he?
It was everybody, because I didn't have any schooling. It wasn't. I just took every book that I thought that looked cool, and and because going in at it as a the way I visualize inks, not only do you have to get all the weights and all that, you do, they talk about all the thicks and thins and blah blah blah. You hear all the people, the inkers talk about that kind of thicks and thins, bouncy, blah 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 blah. It's it's making the picture look like a 3D piece of art, even though it's it's flat, right? So you're trying to give everything weight, and that was in trying to put texture in there. So I just tried to look at just anybody and everybody, and I would, I just grab, books after books after books, and I just go into them, and I'd go, I like that, I don't like this. This looks good. That looks bad. I don't like this. This is crappy. This looks great. And I'd work on those things, and I tried to end up coming up with a real dynamic ink line, which is what I really liked about some of the Spider-Man stuff, because most of it was pretty tight and clean. And, even though I can, love Bernie Wrightson's stuff and Jimmy's stuff, still need to be able to make, textures and all that kind of stuff. So I just took everything that I possibly could find, and just started practicing. Like, that looks good. That doesn't look good. I don't like this. I don't like that. Because, and then just started showing editors and stuff. And because of Mitch and Steven and Roland, I kind of thought, if those guys are being pencilers, if I could, ink the way that they kind of liked a little bit, and as long as I liked it, then they would probably suggest to me, or just suggest it to their editors, if they're looking for an inker, well, let Thomas ink it. He's right here. Let him. And that's kind of how it worked out for me. Because so I kind of, if you ever see the stuff that I ink over Steven and stuff, I people say that Stephen Butler, that is, I don't know if I didn't mention their last name, Mitch Bird and Stephen Butler. I ink their stuff, I think, really well. People really love when I ink their stuff. So, and it's not much different than what I'm doing over Pete here. Just trying to take what he's drawn and try to just make it look crazy cool. That's my idea of a good ink, and try to give it some weight, make it everything pulled down, make the thicks and thins in the right spots where everything has a weight to it. And that's kind of, but anybody particular? No, just everybody. Every time I look at art, I and then when I see, like when I see stuff that Pete inks over himself, I'm like, well, Pete inked it that way because he really likes that kind of thing. So I try to go, well, okay, I'll throw some of that in there too, just to make Pete happy. And that's just kind of you got to make the penciler happy, so the penciler gets you kicked off a book quick if he's not happy with your inks. And so
that collaborative spirit, right? And I think what both you and Pete were talking about, you have to You have to love it. And I find in so many things, people love the idea of being
Yes.
a musician. They love the idea of being a comic book artist because they like the idea of what it affords them, but they don't really love the process. And if you don't love the process, then you really don't love being whatever that thing is, you know? It's a harsh wake up call, right? And from Pete's response, I bet you saw a lot of that at the school or in general, right?
Even some teachers said after someone dropped out, they would say that. They said, yeah, they loved the idea of being a comic book artist.
Yeah.
They weren't prepared to be a comic book artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, a
Being
lot
a
of
comic book
new
artist.
folks don't realize how much time it takes
It
to
is.
draw a page. It's a lot of work.
I said to someone the other day, because one of the guys I used to work with in finance, we met up for a drink, and he was like, "Oh, so he was talking to me about what I do now, drawing comic books." And I was like, "Oh, so a page, it'll take me about a day. It's like that's like 12 hours work." He's like, "Really? Just drawing you do it for a whole day? Takes you just that much long to?" I said, "Yeah, to do it right, to do it as well as I can,
To make it look good, yeah.
No, unless you're in it, you don't know." And I don't, I don't appreciate how long it takes other people to do whatever their job may be. Being a lawyer, you don't do that overnight. Being a doctor, that takes a lifetime as well. So unless you're in it, and you got to love it if you were going to do it for that long.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if you folks feel so, but I definitely do. In any endeavor I had, I used to, when I was younger, think that the big step is you do all the work, you achieve the goal, and then after that, it's smooth sailing. You achieve the goal, you made it, and you just maintain it. And what I didn't realize is once you achieve the goal, now you have to work 2 to 3 times harder to maintain it, let alone.
Oh golly, that was always
the hard part.
God. Being a freelance comic book artist is golly, that made you want to scream and made you just want to quit a lot of times.
Sure. How about for you, Roberta? Like we kind of started more like your influences or mentors. I mean, it sounds like Jerry was a big influence, but was there?
He was the initial influence because I had always respected his work, and I had interviewed him for school as a working illustrator. We had to do pick somebody you really admired, and so I dove into his history, and I was just fascinated with his journey. And like I really did respect his opinions, and when I had questions about art, I came to him quite a bit for when I'd say if you want to go forward on how I was influenced what I was working, the entire team.
Yeah.
We had a whole group of people doing the same job, all of us on the same comic at the same time. And so we would talk to each other quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. There was such an energy to that kind of studio experience, right? I mean,
there was
to
an
be able
excitement
to
about it.
Oh yeah.
So I think that we influenced each other quite a bit, and that gave you a continued excitement towards what you're doing. And it was fun to discover, especially I guess like you were mentioning, Photoshop wasn't really well used in that capacity as a drawing tool. And so we were doing it on our own, in our own way, and whatever way our body felt like doing it. And so all of the people that did the same job, we found different avenues to create the art. And it's like Photoshop is strange that way. You can have different methods to get a certain look. And there's no wrong way, really. So some people would try something and it's like, wow, that makes everything easier. And you try it and it's worse. So, like you just try it and then suggest it to other people and then see if they like it. And sometimes it just changes their world. And, one little thing.
Definitely. I mean, that's
keeping stupid things like a blending layer or whatever,
we have a saying in martial art, which is one move, 1,000 applications. In other words, you can do this one movement or this one gesture, and you can use it in many different ways in many different instances. And that same thing kind of parlays into art, right? Some people may use this transparency for this or this alpha channel or what have you. While we're on the subject of coloring, maybe you could share a little bit of what you're working on right now. I know you're saying it was
Okay,
cat.
so this is Cat and Mouse issue 4,
Mhm.
and I'm just starting the color layout. And at this stage, I'm just going to get a general idea of what color I'm going to put in the background.
Mhm.
And then I just lay in the flat colors for the characters, and then I'll start rendering them. But as I go, I start thinking and comparing, and so like I will actually, I think I'll get it most of the way done by the end of the show. We'll see.
That's great. And that's Wubba's pencils, right? And
Yes.
is Barb's inks, or whose inks are that?
Oh my
It's
goodness, it's Barb's
Barb?
inks.
Yeah.
Barb's? Yeah.
Tommy can't do everything for me,
Exactly. Looking at it, and it's such a privilege to kind of be with everybody and seeing the messages that we send each other of our works in progress. And it's really neat because, at least for me, I've seen Wubba's pencils and his stuff kind of evolving. It's getting even more kind of cinematic, and the storytelling is getting more extreme as I see each page getting in, and he's getting a little bit bolder and more confident. It's really cool to see that evolution, so
I
that's
agree. Yeah,
now that bottom
that's
panel.
the best part.
Yeah, that bottom panel.
Yes.
So you got the two. Looks like the two complementary colors. Is that just more of, if I can ask, is that more just of a guideline, and then you're going to add in the more quote unquote?
I literally just separated her from background. That's it.
That's what it was for. Okay.
It's not laid in yet.
Okay.
I did want that general gold feel down there, because this is just a beginning of the grass. But the grass, it's a nighttime scene. It's dark enough that this will keep getting darker. So I want this, this crying character to take a lot more precedence.
That's great.
So.
Kind of punch it up. So for me, as far as mentors and stuff like that, it was there's an advantage to being the low man on the totem pole, and I definitely was, at Malibu. But the great part about it is I would be the guy that would do all the little tasks and be floating around from department to department. So there'd be days where I'd be in the art department. There'd be days when I'd be, most of the time I'd be with Roland or reproducing art or even doing touch-ups on inks or little things like that. And so like what you kind of alluded to, Roberta, I mean, I think everybody influenced me heavily. And I think what was so special about that time was I got to see the whole process every day. I could see a page being penciled, and then a couple of days later see it being inked, and the whole process. So to be able to see that was fascinating, and just to walk by the coloring department, they were always in the front main bullpen. It was always darkly lit, and you'd walk by and you just see these glowing screens with everybody working on all the coloring. It was really cool. So definitely a big influence, and Roland, of course, definitely would help me out with things. Roland was the kind of like a teacher in that sense, and he wouldn't necessarily tell me. He would ask me. He would say, well, which of these two pages do you like? And I would say, well, why? Yeah. It's not enough just to say why you like it. Can you articulate, and can you explain? And like I said in the past, sometimes he would actually let me. Now I say that now as an adult, he would let me decide. It could have been he let me decide, and if my decision went along with what he had already decided, that's what happened. Let the kids, they have more power. But I mean, I still remember there were times where he would say, "Hey, here's a page of pencils. We have 3 inkers in house. Which inker should do it?" And so I want this guy to do it. Well, why? And then I'd say, okay, let him do it. So, but yeah,
everything's a test with him.
Oh yeah,
great.
Definitely.
But you learn, and you learn how to trust yourself too.
Yeah, I mean,
when you don't defer everything to someone else, you learn a lot about yourself.
Definitely, and I think comic book art. I mean, all art, but I really feel like comic book art is totally like greater than the sum of its equal parts kind of thing. sometimes people say, well, they're not going to see that you put this highlight there or do this, that. But I feel like the reader feels everything that you put on the page, whether they can articulate why, right?
Mhm.
So it's a tremendous art form. So what were there? Here's a very broad question, but I'd be curious. What does anybody have any epiphanies or kind of aha moments where you just kind of your mind opened up about the process, where there was something that you learned or something that you were doing where it just kind of there was this moment, like where you kind of had this realization about developing yourself as an artist, something that changed? Does anybody have any moments they'd like to share?
Interesting.
I've got one.
Yeah.
My main one was when it was when I was working for Jimmy and Steven and all those guys when I was doing stuff, and I was I kept going, I kept inking pages and stuff, and they were looking okay, but there was just something missing, and it was this thick and thin thing, the weight of the inks, and Jimmy gave me the best advice I ever, besides just keep jamming and keep working and just sample and keep doing it and do it, and every spare minute just keep doing it. But he said, go grab some, grab a comic that you like. And he said, grab something that's really busy, that's got a lot of figures in it and stuff. And he says, go grab that book, take it over to your photocopy place and make an 11 by 17, blow it up, black and white of that, that color page, blow it up. And just lay you some vellum over the top of it, some tracing paper, and just ink over, don't try to do your style, just ink over that guy's inks, just ink over his inks. And I remember it was an X-Men page that I just some page that I picked out. It was, I forget which book but it was what was the inker on those X-Men books when doing all the Jim Lee cross hatching and stuff. Oh shoot, I'm so bad I don't remember the person's name. Well, anyway, I started inking it.
Williams.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly. And all of a sudden, I started inking over his line, and I realized I was putting the weights in the wrong spot. And then it was that second. I've told this story before, so y'all have heard it, I'm sure. All of a sudden, I was like, I'm putting the weight in the wrong spot. This is the reason why the inks look really nice, but there was just something off. And then at that 1 second, the next page I did just started looking beautiful because it clicked in my head that I was putting the weights in the wrong spot. I was kind of, when you, like, for instance, and I mentioned this on the thing, like, you got your arm here, you see the light from this light is shining, on the tip part of the round part of your arm is the thinnest part of the line to where it gets thicker on the ends, right? I was just, and you'll see a lot of inkers get it wrong. They'll just, do the whole thing one big thickness, or they'll put the big thick part in the middle and thin on the ends and all that kind of stuff, and it makes the arms look like they're bowed out and stuff. And if you just get the thicks and thins, so that was for me. That was my epiphany, if you would say. All of a sudden, I was like, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. And then at that point, I showed Jimmy some more samples, and he goes, "You got it." And then about a week or two later, I started getting work.
That's so cool.
No lie. I just did not see that I was inking the lines in the wrong spots, or the thicks and thins in the wrong. I was just making everything look awkward. It was still crisp and everything like I do now, but it was just the line, the highlight as the light passes over to make things look three-dimensional, like I keep trying to say with the inks. I was just doing it in the wrong spot, and it just made everything look clunky. And then it just worked out. So that was me.
How great that he showed you how to get the answer instead of just spelling it out to you. That's a real teacher, right? Lead you to it instead of
Yeah, that way you learned it, and it was a clear. My class was just doing it. Going to school was just hundreds of pages of sample pages, just doing them. Yeah, so that was that for me. That was the moment.
That's excellent. Does he?
It's a
I
great
mean,
story.
not to be too similar, does he know that he had this level of an impact on you? Because
Oh yeah, no, he knows. No, and
yeah.
I've you know, every time I you know, when you know, I don't over the past couple of years, of course, I hadn't seen him that much, but you know, we're still good friends and everything, and you know, whenever we have a little quiet moment, and you know, I still got to give him a hug, and I go, you know, I'm giving you a hug, and he goes, I know,
That's
and
great.
just because he you know, and of course with the Stephen and Mitch and all that kind of stuff and Roland, it's you know, they're the ones that that kept me, you know, kept me with supply of pencils, fresh pencils to work on all the time.
That's
So
great. Well, you know, teaching is, you know, and I know PE teachers are, you know, and I always feel like teaching is a way of kind of not only paying back, but also kind of it's the closest you can get to immortality in a way, because you pass something on to somebody else and it carries on to the next and to the next and to the next, you know. And so it's like when I first started teaching martial arts, my teachers, one of my I never wanted to be a teacher. I thought I had the ability, but one of my teachers came up to me and finally kind of had a heart to heart. And he goes, you know, if you don't teach, then all that knowledge just basically dies with you, you know. He goes, if you teach, then you can pass it on to somebody else and they can do something with it. And that's a life, you know, essentially what he was saying is that's a life worth, you know, well lived, you know.
Yeah.
So that's great, you know, because some people hold on to it like it belongs to them. And I think that's the misunderstanding, is the knowledge doesn't belong to you. You just, hopefully you get it and you transmit it to the next person, but it doesn't belong to any of us, you know. So for you, how about for you, Pete? You know, I know you were looked like you were kind of considering some.
Yeah, I they kept banging on at school about, oh, you go into all these little details, you getting too close, you're getting all these details, you know, it's going to make the page look busy. Okay, yeah, okay. So you try and pull back, but it's not until you actually see a printed comic book and you can see the page actually shrunk down. You go, yeah, okay, that I can see what they were talking about now. Okay, I don't need all that hatching and all that stuff. So it's literally since really since the first team up book came out, I've started realizing that actually no, I don't need all that hatching stuff in there. It does make it look busy. So for Trumps, especially Trumps issue 4, I think there's a huge difference in my art. It's a lot less busy. I think Tommy could say yes or no to that.
No, for sure.
It's trying to be less busy, just
more bold to me. This stuff that I'm making, this this is I'm loving. This is
yeah, and you can be told this stuff 1,000 times, a million times, as we were, but it's not on 11 by 17. You think, oh no, that's okay. I can't really see it. I mean, yeah, okay, but I like it. Then it's shrunk down to page. You know, yeah, there's a lot of hatching, isn't there, all over? Actually, I don't need that.
When it's also the style, you know, if you're doing some Bernie Wrightson kind of artwork, of course it's going to have all that kind of rendering and stuff going on. But when we're doing this type of look,
I'm trying to keep it. Keep it just less busy is the word, and that's
make it look cool.
That's something I've always been told, and that's it. Just I've started to realise what they were saying now.
Yeah.
I don't know, because they was at school they'll say to you, you know, it could be another 10 years before this stuff starts to really click. I've got to hope it isn't, because by that time I don't know what we're doing. But there's no better example than actual having your comic book printed in front of you and looking and go, could have done that better if I just done that different.
Yeah.
So
I think it's that first step of anything is acquiring the skill and the ability, and then the next step is restraint, right? How do you reel it in? Now that you can, how do you navigate that? And that's always interesting, you know. And so that's why I've always been a big fan. And there's all different styles, but I always love watching, like when Frank Miller was doing Sin City or Mike Mignola's art. I mean, to be able to say so much with a minimalist.
Yes, that's right. I really love those guys that can just do very. It looks simple because it's just black, white, and it's open, you know, almost open, but it takes a long time to get there to be able to say, actually, no, I can take all these lines out and just have John Paul Leon was very good at that. I mean, he was a master of that.
Oh yeah.
Brian Azzarello does that really well, that noir stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And Frank Miller, obviously, with Sin City, just black and white. And it works perfectly.
And but you have to go through that process, right? You can't just jump straight to that. It's
you
like
can't jump to that. I wish you could. I wish I could jump to that, but you can't. It takes forever to get there, and some people never get there, and some people don't want to get there. They go a different direction.
Yeah, and it totally. I mean, that's why I like Ronin. When you look at Ronin, the Frank Miller book, you can actually see all the styles that he was trying to figure out that became his trademarks. And you know, but yeah, you can't get to that point without traveling a certain distance, you know. So that's great. How about for you, Roberta? Was there any epiphanies or kind of like moments creatively, specifically in comic books, that you know, kind of, you know?
Yeah, moments. It's hard for me to pinpoint, honestly, but I would point, I think, to just as the work that we were doing evolved quite a bit. You know, we had just been working on Ultraverse, and then we opened up to quite another group of styles. I think that range that we had, and seeing what was coming through the shop, that was for me the most interesting thing. Like, you know, you're mentioning Sergio Aragonés coming in, and his style completely throws you because it's very detailed, but the busyness is all deliberate, you know, and you can't say that it's an easy thing to color, because you can't make an awful lot of shading in it before you you know, you don't have any room for it, really. So you have to adjust your thought process per artist. And that was really what it was for me, because prior to that, it was just my own thoughts of like, you know, I admire this artist and that artist, and that, you know, and it just kind of was more simple of, you know, like I think test myself with ranges outside of my own comfort zone. But when I was actually having to do it for work, I think that made a huge difference, you know.
Sure.
And
I agree.
that's the big epiphany, is just, you know, having something that's not something you're used to doing, and your initial approach has to be thought of in a different way.
Definitely, you know. For me, I mean, there were I was fortunate to have quite a few of the, you know, epiphanies or revelations, but a couple that stand out was, I still remember there was an artist named Sam Liu. He only did a couple drawings for a couple Malibu comic covers. He I think at one point was working for Extreme Studios, and then he ended up being an animation director. But I remember one time he was drawing a picture for me, because I was about to leave for college, so I got everybody to do a sketch for me, and he happened to be in the office. And as he's drawing this really cool illustration of Nightman, he would put his thumb over certain parts of the illustration and just hold it there for a second, covering it apart, and then he, like an empty part, and then he keep drawing. And I asked him, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, when he puts his thumb on the piece of paper, he visualizes what line would go there and what would look good before he puts his pencil back down." And it was such a avant-garde kind of technique, you know. Yeah, but I started doing it, and it worked. So that was pretty cool, just thinking outside the box. Another one was when coloring. I went to college and I was still doing freelance work, and I was coloring. I was doing color designs for a book that Joyce Chen was doing. You know, Art Adams' wife, and I really was like, you know, I was coloring, but in my heart I wanted to be a penciler. So I was really kind of overdoing it with the colors and the detail and not really focusing. And she kind of called me because I was living in San Francisco. But she was great. You know, she was living in San Francisco, so was I. We met each other a few times to talk, and she just kind of had a chit chat with me. And she just said, "Hey, look," she says, "you got to remember what your role is." You know, she says, "You know, you're," and she wasn't mean about it. She just said, "You're in service of what's already on the paper, and you have to be in service of that so that the story goes and so that it doesn't get distracting. You have to do what's right for what's there. And basically it was stay in your lane, but it was the sweetest, nicest, most professional way to say it.
I'm messing with my stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you just color this and quit adding your own stuff to it?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was a huge moment. And the last one was with Roland. It was kind of something similar. I was afforded so many opportunities working at Malibu, and they were working on an Ultra Force video game. It never came out, but they were well along to it before the video game division closed. And I had read the design doc, and they didn't have the main villain character wasn't created yet. So being the kind of ballsy kid I did, I knew the guy who was the creative person on the team, Scott Sava. So I asked Scott, I said, well, have you guys designed the villain yet? And he said, no. So I had already drawn a picture. I said, what about this? And he was really cool. And he said, yeah, we'll do it. He'll be the guy that fights all the Ultra Force characters. And they actually meant it. And cool. So, yeah, it was so great. And so every day I'd be working for Roland, and then I go, hey, Roland, can I go sneak off to the design team on the video game and see what they're working on? And he'd go, okay, yeah. So I run over there, I'd see what they're doing, and then I come back. Well, this went on for like months, right? And after like the second month, Roland goes, Curtis, no, you can't go over there. I said, why? He goes,
they sent me a memo. They said, don't let Curtis come back over here anymore.
Well, it was just about being professional. He said, your job is to be the editorial assistant. And this is something special that, you're kind of getting to do on the side, but that's not your job. Your job is to be here working in editorial, and it's again, that idea of being professional. You can have aspirations, but you got to stay in your lane, and some people don't learn that until they're escorted out the building. So I was very fortunate on both occasions, right?
Didn't get that far.
Definitely. Well, believe it or not, I think we're at that time. We will go ahead. Yeah, can you believe it?
Wow. Okay. I didn't finish.
That's okay.
Oh, well.
I'm gonna close that out so we can kind of do our final little song and dance here. So just a couple reminders for everybody as we are winding down here. Don't forget to check out the Silverline merch store. It's on Zazzle, and you can get all sorts of cool products like Silverline mugs, shirts. Roberta, we're gonna give Roberta the one shot here. Here we go. Roberta, part of the Silverline
mug
spring collection. She's got the mug and the matching. Yep. It's not a red shirt.
Let me get it over. There we go. I'm covering myself. There.
Exactly.
There's Silverline, and look who's on it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, definitely. So that's part of our part of our merchandise. So you can definitely check that out. It helps out. Thanks to everybody who supported our recent Kickstarter. We really appreciate that. So that's Wolf Hunter and Sirens. Stay tuned for updates about that. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe. It's just a couple flexes of your index finger, but it does wonders for us. It's a huge thing for us when you do those things. So please do that. And also don't forget our sponsors, Orlando Collectors Deviants, and also don't forget about Daytona Beach Comic-Con. That's Saturday, September 10th and Sunday, September 11th. And quite a few of our crew will be there, including Pete will be coming all the way across the pond for it. So please check it out. It's a great convention. And
come say hi.
Yeah, come say hi.
Yeah, Pete's going to go bike riding with Roland and I out in the woods and see some alligators.
Yeah. Alligator hunting, right?
That's right. No, we're not hunting.
I'll go look at some gators. I won't get on a bike.
There you go. Next,
we got a few months. We'll convince you.
Yeah. And, of course, we have our Tuesday show, our Wednesday show. And don't forget, next Sunday, we'll be back with special guest Jerry Bingham, phenomenal artist, one of the best Batman artists of all time, I'd say. So please come back for that. Let's go around and have everybody kind of share with everybody where they can find you online. So I'm going to kind of go in reverse order. We're going to start with Roberta. So Roberta, feel free to tell everybody where they can find you.
All right. You can find me on Roby Conroy in Instagram and Facebook. And I suppose I'm going to try TikTok.
Okay.
At some point.
Nice.
I'll do
Nice.
something. Yeah,
Very
I'm gonna
cool.
try some stop motion stuff there. You know?
Oh, cool.
Oh,
Very
very cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I
check
just,
that
I just
out.
use it to watch funny videos.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
And
let's
that's it.
go. Very good. And let's go to Pete. Pete, if you could share with everybody where they can find you online.
Well, there is a little thing called Google. If you type into Google, Peter
How do you spell that?
Clinton- Is what?
Google. How do you spell
Google, I
it?
don't know how you spell it.
Okay.
It just opens automatically on my computer. But if you type into that Peter Clinton art, you will find my Instagram, my Facebook, my Twitter, my TikTok.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think that's everything. LinkedIn, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you want to contact me on LinkedIn, go ahead.
Very
Yeah,
good.
He's on Reddit. He's on all the different ones.
Yeah,
All the different
all that stuff.
And Mr. Flormonte, if you would be so kind as to share people where they can find you.
Just go to infernostudios.com. There's some links there, but mostly I'm on Facebook. You can find me there. And then I've got if Roberta's going to start doing her TikTok thing, I've got a
Yes.
TikTok. I'll start
You
doing
gotta
it.
do
too.
it.
It's
All
called Tom.
right.
It's Tommy Don't TikTok. And so just go there. That's my username. And if there's some videos, if Roberta will do it, I'll do it too. We'll put some up there.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Excellent.
Some twerking videos.
Very
Nope.
good. Very good. And for myself, there's two ways to find me, either through my martial arts school or through my upcoming comic book. So it's going to be for my comic book, theshadowghost.com, and for my martial arts school, it's tigercrane.net, and we do have an online program that we're doing, so you can go ahead and check us out there. So that's me. Also follow Silverline online, and other than that, without further ado, everybody make sure to 1, 2,
Yeah,
2.5, 2 3/4. Make
Mine
Silverline. There you go. Thank you, everybody. Take
Bye.
care, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
been fun. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Alex Saviuk, and I just want to let you know, make mine Silverline.